The doctor froze, scalpel in hand, when Anna shouted behind him. Her small voice echoed in the white room, trembling with fear and urgency. My son Daniel clenched his jaw, avoiding my eyes as always. On the tray, the silver scissors clinked again, sharp and cold. "Grandma, should I tell the truth?" she whispered, shaking. Daniel turned sharply, his fingers stabbing the air toward me. "Sign the paper, Mom. It's already decided," he barked. His wife smirked, sliding the consent form across the metal table. The pen rolled, tapping the steel with a dry, nervous sound. The nurse whispered, "Friday, 10 a.m., or they'll push it through anyway." The smell of antiseptic burned my throat, making me gag slightly. I stared at the black ink line where my name should be. My hands shook, but I kept them flat against the sheets. Daniel leaned closer, his cologne suffocating, heavy and arrogant. "Stop hesitating. Don't make this harder than it is." I felt the sharp edge of shame cutting through my chest. How could he order me like a servant, not a mother? The wall clock ticked too loud, each second hammering inside my skull. Was Anna's trembling voice the only shield I had left? My lips moved, but no sound came out. "Think, Mom. Without this, he dies. Do you want that guilt?" His wife's words dripped like poison, each syllable stabbing deeper. I glanced at Anna, her hands hidden behind her skirt. What secret was she holding back from all of us? Why had she dared to interrupt now in front of them? I remembered nights spent stitching clothes to pay for his school. Back then, every needle prick felt like a sacrifice of love. And now he demanded my body itself, like a possession. I clenched the sheet so tightly the fabric cut my palm. Was love always meant to end like this? The pen rolled again, this time stopping against my wrist. Its weight felt like a shackle, trapping me in silence. Daniel pushed it harder into my hand, forcing the choice. "Do it now. Don't embarrass us in front of everyone." I stared at the ink stain on my skin, dark and accusing. The doctor cleared his throat, trying to regain control of the scene. His gaze went to Anna, his voice sharp. "What truth?" She froze, eyes darting between me and Daniel's burning stare. A bead of sweat slid down my neck, cold and slow. The walls seemed to lean closer, listening for her answer. "Grandma," she whispered again, lower this time, almost hidden. My breath caught, the world pausing on that fragile moment. What did she know? What could a girl have seen? Daniel's hand landed heavy on the metal table, rattling it. "Enough games. Speak or leave," he snapped at her. Anna stepped back, her shoes squeaking on the polished floor. Her eyes glistened, but she pressed her lips tightly shut. She wanted to reveal something, but the fear was stronger. The silence grew unbearable, broken only by the ticking clock. I closed my eyes, praying for just one ally. But allies vanish quickly in a hospital ruled by paper, the form, the signature, the ticking of deadlines. Those were kings. I wanted to scream, but my voice hid somewhere deep. Every breath cost me courage I didn't know I still had. What could she possibly be holding back from us all? The nurse folded her arms, impatient, eyes flicking toward the clock. 10 sharp, she repeated, firm, like a sentence already given. I felt my chest tighten, a crushing weight of helplessness. Anna's trembling hands slipped behind her back, gripping something unseen. What secret object was she hiding from everyone in the room? And then 3 quick knocks echoed from the hallway door. The sound cut through the tension, loud as gunfire. The doctor turned his head, frowning toward the corridor. Daniel muttered, low and angry, "Not now, not him." I held my breath, waiting for the door to open. The door opened slowly, hinges squealing, and silence spread like smoke. A tall figure stood there, but before I could focus, Anna gasped. The doctor turned abruptly, eyes narrow, demanding, "What truth? Speak now." His stare burned into my granddaughter, a force pressing her small frame. I held my breath, praying she wouldn't crumble under his gaze. Daniel folded his arms, a smirk curling at the edge of his lips. His silence was worse than shouting, a mask hiding deeper cruelty. I felt the room tilting, the smell of iodine stinging stronger. On the tray, the scalpel gleamed, cold, patient, waiting for flesh. And in that gleam, I saw my name already engraved. Anna's fingers trembled. Something small clutched tightly in her fist. Her knuckles whitened, and sweat trickled down her temple. I shouldn't say it here," she stammered, voice nearly breaking. Daniel slammed his palm against the metal bed, rattling everything. "You'll ruin everything with your childish nonsense," he hissed at her. The nurse broke the silence, voice sharp, but shaking. "If she doesn't sign by Friday at 9, it's automatic." The words echoed in my chest like a hammer of doom. 2 days, only 2 days before they forced the knife. How can a lifetime shrink into 48 hours? I glanced at the form again, the ink line waiting. It looked more alive than me, hungry for my name. Would my silence feed their greed, or buy me time? The pen rolled, tapping again, each click like a countdown. Was this how a mother's worth was measured, by her liver? Daniel leaned in, his breath hot against my cheek. "Don't play stubborn. You owe me this much," he growled. I recoiled, the mattress springs creaking beneath my weight. All the while, Anna's eyes begged me silently for trust. What was she hiding that could shift this cruel balance? The administrator's folder peeked from under her arm, corners bent. Inside, I knew my life was nothing but numbers. Blood results, charts and lines ready to erase my voice. I felt the sting of shame rising, choking my throat. I was reduced to paper, not a mother anymore. "Doctor," I whispered, my voice thin as smoke, "are they allowed to do this without my consent?" He didn't answer, only adjusted his glasses, eyes unreadable. Daniel laughed softly, a cruel, dismissive sound. "Consent is just a formality. We've already decided." The fluorescent light buzzed overhead, relentless, never blinking. Shadows sharpened across Daniel's face, carving cruelty deeper. I thought of nights working double shifts, sewing until dawn. My fingers bled back then, but I kept going for him. Now those same hands trembled over a pen I refused. Anna stepped forward suddenly, her voice small but steady. "Grandma doesn't match," she blurted, gripping the hidden object. The doctor froze again, finally startled, brows furrowed hard. Daniel's eyes blazed, jaw clenched as he spat. "Shut up!" The room spun as silence swallowed her words. Could it be true? Did she really know something vital? My heart thudded, loud as drums, drowning out reason. If I wasn't a match, why the rush? Why the lies? The answer danced just out of reach, mocking me. What paper or proof could a child carry in her hands? The nurse stepped closer, whispering low, "Careful, child. Speak wisely." But Daniel grabbed her wrist, twisting it until she gasped. "Enough. Leave her out of this," he barked, voice sharp. I wanted to rise, to protect her, but my body failed. Helplessness spread like fire, burning every corner of me. Anna pulled free, clutching the object tighter, refusing to let go. Her eyes glistened, but they carried a spark of defiance. "I'll show her when you're not here," she muttered softly. Daniel's face darkened, his fist clenching by his side. The doctor sighed, pressing fingers to his temples in frustration. The clock ticked louder, 9 sharp on Friday echoing in my skull. 2 days left, each hour a nail in my coffin. If Anna truly had proof, why wait? Why hide? The mystery pressed against me, heavy as the air itself. Could the truth save me before the deadline sealed my fate? The fluorescent light flickered, and for a moment, darkness cut the room. When it blinked back, Daniel was already at the door. He turned, lips curled, eyes black with rage. "Don't listen to her. By Friday, it'll be done." And he left, slamming the door so hard the walls shivered. The slam echoed through the hallway long after Daniel was gone. I felt the walls vibrate, the sound crawling into my bones. Anna stayed still by the bed, clutching her secret with both hands. Her lips quivered, but she refused to speak more. The nurse shifted uncomfortably, then left without a word. The smell of bleach drifted from the corridor, sharp and invasive. I pushed myself up, each muscle screaming, but I had to move. I couldn't stay under his shadow, waiting like prey in a cage. My feet touched the cold tiles, and I shivered instantly. The paper gown clung to my back, sticky with sweat. Anna walked beside me, her eyes darting toward every corner. "Grandma, you can't trust them," she whispered, barely moving her lips. "What do you mean?" I asked, heart pounding. But before she answered, a voice echoed from outside. Daniel's laugh, low, mocking, slicing through the silence. I pressed my back to the wall, hiding in the dim corridor. From there, I saw him leaning close to his wife. "She's old. Better her than me," he muttered with a grin. Her perfume reached me before her words, heavy and sweet. She whispered something, and both of them laughed. The sound stabbed me deeper than any scalpel ever could. How could flesh of my flesh dismiss me so easily? I covered my mouth, holding back a sob that burned my throat. The hallway lights hummed, buzzing with merciless indifference. And then I saw it. Something sticking out of her purse. A folded letter, edges frayed, as if torn in a rush. It peeked out like a forgotten secret, begging to be found. I leaned forward slightly, my breath shallow, eyes fixed on it. Could this be what Anna was hiding from me? Or was it another trap laid to corner me further? My knees shook, weakness spreading like waves up my legs. I gripped the wall rail, the cold steel grounding me. The risk of stepping closer clawed at my chest. Yet curiosity burned, stronger than fear in that moment. I had to know what was written there. Anna tugged my sleeve, her voice urgent. "Don't, Grandma, not here. They'll see you." Her warning cut deep, but my eyes stayed locked on the purse. I remembered every bill I paid for his school, every meal skipped, and now all I saw was betrayal inked on paper. I held still, waiting, heart beating like a drum in my ears. Daniel's wife adjusted her bag, but the letter slipped further out. I almost reached for it when Daniel's voice rose again. "She'll sign. She has no choice," he sneered. His certainty made my skin crawl with shame and rage. Anna pressed something small into my hand. "Later," she whispered, eyes darting toward them. I looked down, just a folded scrap of paper damp with sweat. It trembled in my palm, heavy with unspoken truth. I wanted to open it, but fear held me still. A cart rattled past, wheels squeaking on the tiles. Daniel turned, scanning the hallway like a predator, sensing movement. I froze, breath caught, every muscle tight with dread. He narrowed his eyes, but then turned back to his wife. The danger passed, but the threat still lingered like smoke. Anna pulled me away, guiding me toward the dim end of the corridor. Her steps were quick, but her hand shook as she held me. I longed to ask what she knew, what she carried, but the words caught in my throat, heavy and unfinished. Some truths demand silence before they can be spoken. We stopped at a bench, its surface sticky with old polish. I sat slowly, clutching the scrap she had given me. Every fiber screamed to unfold it, to read at once. But the sound of Daniel's laugh still echoed behind us. If he caught me with it, the cost would be unbearable. I slid the scrap under my gown, close to my heart. The paper was warm against my skin, carrying her, trembling. It pulsed with questions I wasn't ready to face yet. And still, the image of that letter haunted me. Why was the last page missing from it? The corridor stretched before us, long, sterile, endless. Each light flickered like a warning I couldn't ignore. I felt the weight of 48 hours pressing down harder. 2 days until they decided my body wasn't mine anymore. 2 days until the walls closed in for good. A voice called from behind, deep and firm. "Ma'am, you're not allowed here," a guard barked. I turned sharply, pulse racing, clutching the hidden scrap tighter. The guard stepped closer, hand on his belt. Anna gasped, and the paper nearly slipped from my fingers. The guard's footsteps faded behind us, leaving a trail of silence heavy as stone. Anna squeezed my hand, her eyes wide, urging me back toward the room. But my body resisted, every bone aching from the shame I'd overheard. I let her guide me slowly, each step dragging like a chain across the tiles. When we entered, the lights buzzed louder, filling the emptiness with a cruel hum. That night, Daniel came in alone, carrying the same arrogance like a second skin. He sat on the edge of my bed, the mattress sinking under his weight. Once, his eyes didn't meet mine, but darted nervously to the floor. "Mom," he began, his voice lower than usual. It was him who— But the words broke off suddenly as the door opened behind him. His wife stepped inside with a sharp click of her heels on the tiles. The sound cut through the air like knives, slicing Daniel's half-confession. She carried herself like a queen, surveying her subject, gaze cold and cruel. "What are you telling her?" she asked, each word laced with suspicion. Daniel's jaw tightened, and he swallowed whatever truth was ready to escape. I studied his face in that moment, searching for a flicker of guilt. His eyes avoided mine. His lips pressed into silence that betrayed him. The smell of her perfume filled the room, heavy and suffocating, almost sweet. It clung to the sheets, the curtains, even to my own breath. I gripped the blanket, wishing it could shield me from her presence. "Don't fill her head with nonsense," she snapped, brushing her hair back. Her bracelet jingled as she moved, a metallic reminder of power she thought hers. Daniel shifted uncomfortably, his voice locked away by her command. I wanted to scream, demand the rest of his words, force it from him, but fear of what they both held over me kept me still. The form still lay on the metal table, silent and waiting, its corners curled slightly from use, ink stains darkening the edge. That object had become the judge, jury, and executioner of my fate. Every time my eyes touched it, I felt my name already written there. The clock ticked above us, reminding me of Friday's deadline, merciless and near. I remembered another Friday years ago when I skipped meals to pay his tuition. I sat at the kitchen table, the candle burning low as I stitched clothes. My fingers ached, But I whispered, "One day, he'll thank me." The memory stabbed deeper now, bitter and cruel, because gratitude never came. Instead, he demanded more, my body itself, as if I were nothing. Daniel's wife moved closer, her heels echoing like hammers against my chest. She placed her hand on his shoulder, nails digging into his shirt. Her eyes flicked toward me, sharp and mocking, as if daring me to speak. I turned my head away, but shame burned hot in my cheeks. How had I raised him to stand beside someone who thrived on my silence? "Mom," Daniel said finally, his tone stripped of warmth, "you know this is the only way." His words cut, flat and final. But the truth he almost spoke still rattled inside me unfinished. What had he meant with "it was him who was the him? And why was she so desperate to silence him before I could hear? The lamp flickered, and for a moment their faces blurred into shadows. I thought of Anna, her trembling hands clutching the scrap she'd given me. Was the missing page tied to Daniel's half-confession? Was the proof already near? The questions grew louder, pressing against my chest like a locked scream. I knew the answers were close, but just out of reach. Daniel rose from the bed, his frame towering in the dim light. His wife followed, her perfume leaving behind a trail of poison in the room. They left together, the door closing with a slow, deliberate click. I was alone again, surrounded by the buzzing light and the waiting paper. The silence stretched, heavy, echoing with the words he hadn't finished. I sat up slowly, my hands trembling, as I pulled the blanket aside. The scrap Anna had given me still pressed against my chest. Its edges were damp with sweat, fragile but alive with truth. I unfolded it halfway, the letters blurred by her shaky handwriting, and then a sound outside froze me before I could read. Soft footsteps in the corridor, stopping just beyond my door. I held my breath, straining my ears against the buzz of the lamp. The handle turned slowly, metal creaking like a warning in the dark. My heart pounded, the paper still clutched in my trembling hand. And I waited, terrified, for who would enter and cut my silence next. The handle clicked back into place, but the door never opened. Only silence followed, stretching long enough to knot my stomach with dread. I pressed the scrap of paper flat against my chest, afraid to breathe. Then the footsteps receded, leaving me in the stale hum of the room. Every second after felt heavier, dragging me deeper into sleepless waiting. By morning, I couldn't bear the stillness of my own bed. I rose slowly, the cold tiles sending a sharp ache up my legs. The corridor smelled of overused disinfectant, the kind that burns your nose. I shuffled forward, leaning against the wall rail for balance. Anna trailed close behind, her face pale, but determined. We stopped near the nurse's station, where papers shuffled and voices murmured. On the counter sat a stack of folders, names written in black ink. I leaned closer, squinting until one name made my chest tighten. There it was, my own, underlined, like a mark already carved in stone. I reached out, my hand trembling as it hovered over the file. The nurse had stepped away for a moment, her chair still spinning lightly. I gripped the edge of the counter and slid the folder closer. It felt heavier than paper should, thick with truths I feared to see. My knees wavered, but I pulled it open, heart hammering against my ribs. Inside, red stamps, medical charts, and blood results stared back at me. I turned a page slowly, each rustle echoing in my ears like thunder, and then I froze, reading the words I never expected. "Not a compatible donor," the line repeated across multiple tests. The letters blurred as tears welled, but the message was clear. I wasn't even a match. Not now. Not ever. A wave of dizziness swept over me, and I gripped the desk hard. The cold wood cut into my palm, grounding me before I collapsed. All this time, all their pushing, all their threats, it was a lie. Why force me into surgery that could never succeed? What did Daniel truly want, if not my health for his own? The sound of approaching shoes snapped me back into panic. I shoved the folder partly closed, but my fingers lingered on another page. A signature at the bottom. My name, in crooked, shaky lines. But I never held that pen, never touched that ink. A forged consent, buried inside the stack of lies. I slammed the folder shut, my chest burning with terror and rage. Anna tugged at my sleeve, her whisper sharp. "Someone's coming." We stumbled back toward the bench, pretending to rest, like nothing was wrong. But my mind spun, replaying the words stamped across those pages. Not a match, yet they demanded my life anyway. The nurse returned, humming softly, sliding another chart into the pile. Her hands brushed the folder I had just opened. I froze, afraid she'd noticed the misaligned papers inside, but she carried on, unaware, humming that same off-key tune. I exhaled slowly, though my lungs still ached from holding it in. Daniel's voice rang suddenly from the far end of the corridor. I stiffened, gripping Anna's hand until her knuckles turned white. His laughter carried ahead of him, casual, cruel, as if nothing mattered. He turned the corner, his eyes scanning the hallway for us. I looked down, clutching the scrap still hidden against my chest. I wanted to run, to scream, to confront him with the truth. But without proof in my hand, the words would crumble into air. What good is rage when the paper that damns him lies hidden? I swallowed my anger, burying it deep beneath my ribs. Anna squeezed my hand again, her eyes pleading for patience. He passed by us without a glance, speaking into his phone. "Friday at 10, it's final," he said, his tone careless. The deadline twisted tighter around my chest, a noose closing in. He disappeared into another ward, his voice fading, but the threat alive. I sat frozen, the folder's secret screaming louder than his words. Anna leaned close, whispering so low it barely reached me. "Grandma, this isn't about saving him, it's about money." Her words cut deeper than any scalpel could. I turned to her desperate, asking, "What money? What deal?" But she shook her head, tears brimming, too afraid to explain here. The corridor lights flickered, shadows crawling across the floor. Somewhere down the hall, a cart crashed, sending echoes like gunshots. I shivered, clutching both the scrap and the memory of the folder. The evidence existed, but not yet in my hands, and I knew I couldn't wait much longer to claim it. The nurse's humming returned, louder this time, almost mocking. She closed the folders one by one, locking them in a cabinet. The metallic clang of the key turning sent a chill through me. The proof was sealed away, out of reach once more. But in my chest, the fire of truth burned hotter. I leaned back on the bench, sweat dampening the paper gown. My head spun, the deadline, the forgery, the lies twisting together. How many people knew? How many hands had signed away my body? Anna sat close, her small hand resting on my arm. Her silence said more than her words ever could. I closed my eyes for a moment, but the images wouldn't fade. The forged signature, the stamps of incompatibility, the missing page. Every piece pointed toward a truth darker than I imagined. And still, I couldn't act, not yet, not without more, because one wrong move and they'd strip away everything left of me. A sudden knock on the wall beside us startled me. The administrator stood there, clipboard in hand, eyes sharp as knives. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m., she said, her voice flat and final. Behind her, Daniel leaned against the wall, smirking at me. And as she turned away, Anna slipped me another folded note. The administrator's heels clicked away, each step fading, but leaving a scar of dread. Daniel lingered longer, his smirk steady, eyes locked on mine like iron. He tapped the clipboard with 2 fingers, slow, deliberate, a warning without words. I clutched Anna's note in my fist, but my chest burned with fear. The air thickened around me, as if the walls themselves had heard his threat. When he finally left, the silence was worse than his presence. I unfolded the note slowly, my hands shaking so much the paper rattled. Anna's handwriting curved unevenly, letters pressing hard into the page. "Check the second folder tomorrow. Don't let them see you." My heart thudded. So she had already seen what I had missed. The rest of the night, I lay awake, haunted by the forged lines. The memory of my name, bent and crooked, stared back at me. How many times had I signed school papers, medical slips, small permissions? Every curve of my handwriting was a gift of care to Daniel. And now those same letters were twisted into a weapon against me. At dawn, the room smelled faintly of burnt coffee drifting from the hall. The nurse walked past, humming again, her keys jingling like a taunt. Anna sat curled in the chair, her hair falling across her face. She had stayed all night, keeping watch while I fought shadows. The small hand still clutched mine, warm, trembling, but faithful. By mid-morning, I gathered enough courage to move again. I waited until the station was empty, the chair still spinning. The cabinet stood tall, metal cold, the keyhole shining like an eye. I forced my legs to carry me, each step heavier than the last. The memory of yesterday's discovery dragged me closer to the truth. The second folder was there, just as Anna promised in her note. Its edges were worn, fingerprints smudged across the cover. I flipped it open, bracing myself, and the breath left my chest. More forms, more charts, but this time the ink ran deeper. Pages signed with my name, Contracts, agreements I had never seen before. Each signature looked shakier than mine, but close enough to deceive. A faint tremor in the pen strokes as though rushed in dim light. And one sentence leapt at me from the page like a knife. I hereby consent to the removal and transplantation without reservation. My stomach turned, bile rising at the thought of their fraud. I pressed the paper to my nose. The smell of fresh ink lingered, not old, not forgotten, but recent, forged within these very walls. They hadn't just planned this, they were executing it step by step. And if I spoke too soon, they could destroy the evidence easily. My silence had to be my shield, at least for now. The sound of shoes clicked behind me, and I nearly dropped the folder. I shoved it closed, sliding it back, just as Daniel's wife appeared. Her eyes swept the station, cold, sharp, hunting for weakness. "Still awake, old woman?" she sneered, her tone dripping with contempt. I forced a smile, though my insides trembled like fragile glass. She leaned over the counter, tapping her nails against the wood. "You'll save him tomorrow, whether you want to or not." Her perfume rolled toward me again, sweet but suffocating, like poisoned honey. I fought the urge to gag, biting my tongue until I tasted blood. The folder sat inches away, its secrets screaming for air. I turned to leave, my hand pressed to the rail for balance. But her words followed, sticky and venomous. "Without you, he gets nothing." Nothing. The word echoed, dark and loaded with hidden meaning. Was this about inheritance, about money Anna had warned me of? I stumbled forward, the weight of betrayal pressing harder into my spine. Back in my room, Anna rushed to me, eyes wide with fear. "What did you see?" she asked, her voice urgent but hushed. I hesitated, the truth tangled in my throat like barbed wire. If I told her everything, would the danger grow too fast? Or was silence the very trap they needed to keep me bound? I reached for her hand instead, squeezing it tight, drawing strength. She blinked back tears, whispering, "I have more proof, Grandma. Trust me." I wanted to believe, wanted to lean on her small shoulders, but the ticking clock on the wall reminded me of time's cruelty. Friday, 10 a.m. The hour hung over me like a noose. I closed my eyes, memories flooding, nights of sacrifice pounding back. The winter when I sold my wedding ring to buy Daniel medicine. The summers when I skipped meals so he could eat first. Love had been my signature all those years, every act a contract. And now my love was twisted into forged ink, binding me to death. The door burst open suddenly, startling us both into silence. The administrator stood there again, clipboard in hand, expression stiff. "Bring all documents to me tomorrow at 10 sharp, she ordered. Her eyes darted to Anna briefly, suspicion flashing before she left. And Daniel, standing just behind her, smirked wider than ever. I sank back against the bed, sweat trickling down my temples. The forged papers pulsed in my mind, alive and dangerous. Anna bent down quickly, slipping another folded note into my hand. Her eyes said everything her lips couldn't. Time was running out. And as the door closed again, I felt the walls tighten around me. The night dragged heavy, each tick of the wall clock pressing deeper into my chest. I barely slept, my mind replaying the words on those forged papers. When I finally drifted off, the sound that woke me wasn't the clock. It was a knock, 3 sharp raps on the hospital door, steady, deliberate. The noise cut through the silence louder than thunder in the dark. I jolted upright, the sheet sticking to my damp skin, heart racing wild. Anna stirred in the chair beside me, blinking, fear etched across her face. The knock came again, firmer this time, as if impatient. I reached for her hand, but she pulled back, her eyes fixed on the door. The sound of voices outside seeped through, low and tense. The door opened, and the administrator entered, clipboard clutched against her chest. Her eyes were colder than ever, reflecting no hint of sleep or mercy. Behind her, Daniel stood in the doorway, leaning casually against the frame. His arms crossed, his smirk sharp, as though he'd already won. The air between us thickened, every breath dragging like broken glass. The administrator stepped closer, her heels striking the floor in crisp rhythm. "You have until tomorrow 10 a.m., she said, her tone flat, absolute. "Bring all the documents. If not, the procedure will proceed regardless." Each word struck like a gavel, sentencing me before a jury unseen. I felt my stomach twist, the walls shrinking, leaving no air to breathe. Daniel leaned forward, his shadow stretching long across the bed. "Don't waste time, Mom. You can't fight this," he muttered, almost amused. His cologne drifted toward me again, thick and suffocating, a prison of scent. My body tensed. but my voice refused to rise against him. The pen still rested on the table, mocking me with silent demands. Anna stood suddenly, her hands clenched into trembling fists. But before she could speak, she lowered her eyes, hiding behind silence. Her lips pressed together, a secret locked tightly in her small frame. The administrator noticed, her gaze narrowing, suspicion sharp and probing. I prayed Anna wouldn't betray what she carried in her pocket. The clipboard scraped as the administrator scribbled something on the form. The sound of her pen on paper grated like nails against my bones. She tore the sheet free, folded it once, and set it on the table. 10 o'clock. Tomorrow. Don't be late, she said with finality. Then she turned, walking out with the certainty of someone holding the rope. Daniel lingered, his smirk widening as he watched me clutch the blanket. He tilted his head, as if studying an animal trapped in a cage. "Sleep well, Mom. It's your last night to decide," he whispered coldly. His eyes glinted before he followed the administrator into the hall. The door closed slowly, sealing me back into suffocating silence. Anna sat down heavily, her chest rising and falling too fast. She pulled something from her sleeve, sliding it quickly into my hand. Her touch lingered, urging me to hide it before anyone returned. The folded paper felt small, but pulsed with dangerous weight. I shoved it under the blanket, close against my side. "What is it?" I whispered, but she shook her head quickly. "Later," she said, voice cracking with fear, eyes darting to the door. Her shoulders sagged as though carrying a secret too heavy for her frame. She turned away, staring at the window, where night pressed hard against the glass. I sat frozen, the paper burning into my skin like a brand. The smell of disinfectant grew stronger, drifting from the hallway vents. It mixed with the faint sweetness of Anna's hair as she leaned close. I wanted to protect her, shield her from the cruelty in Daniel's eyes, but instead she was the one shielding me, hiding truths I couldn't yet see. The shame of that reversal dug into me deeper than any scalpel. The clock ticked louder, each second a nail hammering into the coffin of tomorrow. I pressed my fist against my chest, the hidden note crinkling beneath my palm. How could paper feel heavier than iron? How could silence cut deeper than steel? I wanted answers, but I feared them too, knowing they might crush me whole. Still the deadline loomed, and I had no choice but to face it. Anna leaned closer, her whisper sharp and urgent in my ear. "Tomorrow in the chapel," she breathed, as if it were a prayer. Her words trembled, but carried a spark of defiance, stronger than her years. I stared at her, my throat dry, my eyes stinging with helpless gratitude. And though she said nothing more, I clung to the promise in her voice. The night outside pressed harder, the window rattling softly with the wind. I tried to close my eyes, but visions of forged signatures swarmed. Every crooked letter mocked me, dragging me back to the papers I never signed. I imagined the ink still drying, their lies still fresh and growing, and the fear of losing not just my body but my dignity tightened its grip. Anna rested her head on the chair arm, drifting into a restless sleep. Her hand hung over the edge, fingers twitching as though chasing dreams. I reached out, covering it gently with mine, whispering a silent prayer. Her courage was my last lifeline, though it came wrapped in trembling. If she carried proof, I would follow her tomorrow, no matter the cost. But sleep refused me, the shadows crawling across the walls too loud to ignore. The knock still echoed in my head, the administrator's words hammering after it. 10 a.m. tomorrow, the line between surrender and survival. And Daniel's smirk haunted me, promising shame if I resisted, ruin if I obeyed. In that moment, I knew silence could no longer protect me. The papers burned in my memory, the note pressed warm against my skin. My heart thudded like a drum, louder than the ticking clock above. Anna stirred beside me, whispering in her sleep, "The chapel, tomorrow." The word wrapped around me like both salvation and threat, and in the stillness of night I waited for morning to rip it open. The morning light seeped through the blinds in thin gray stripes, slicing the room into bars. I hadn't slept at all, my mind trapped between dread and anticipation. Anna stirred beside me, her hair messy, her small face pale with worry. She blinked awake, then clutched my arm with sudden urgency. "Now, Grandma," she whispered, "before they're watching." We walked slowly through the corridor, each step echoing too loudly on the tiles. The air reeked of bleach and something faintly metallic like dried blood. I leaned against the rail, my legs trembling under the weight of the night. Anna led me toward the chapel, her eyes darting nervously at every corner. The ticking clock in my mind reminded me less than 24 hours left. The chapel door creaked open, and a wave of incense rolled out. The smell was heavy, sweet, and choking, clinging to the back of my throat. Candles flickered weakly against the stone walls, their light small and fragile. The silence inside felt sacred, yet every shadow seemed to listen closely. I clutched Anna's hand, my pulse racing faster than the flame. She guided me to the back pew, where the light was dimmest. Her hand shook as she reached into her pocket, pulling out a small object. I saw the glint of metal before it disappeared into my palm. It was a USB drive, cold, smooth, heavier than it should have been. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "This is the proof." I held it tightly, its edges pressing into my skin, anchoring me in terror. "What's on it?" I asked, my throat raw, the words scraping out. Anna bit her lip, her eyes glistening under the candlelight. "I heard them," she said. "I recorded them when they thought I was asleep." Her shoulders trembled, but her gaze burned steady, filled with courage. The drive felt alive in my hand, pulsing with every beat of my heart. If it contained their voices, then my silence could finally break. But what if it wasn't enough? What if they destroyed it before it was heard? The thought of Daniel's smirk returned, sharper, crueler, mocking my hope. My chest tightened as I slipped the USB under my gown, close to my heart. Anna leaned closer, whispering as though the pews themselves could betray us. "They laughed, Grandma. They said you'd never notice the forgery." Her words cut deeper than any scalpel, ripping through layers of trust. I pressed my palm against my chest, feeling the small device against my ribs. Every second with it hidden there felt like borrowed time. I wanted to cry, to collapse into the wood of the bench, but instead I straightened, fueled by a spark of rage under the fear. All those years of sacrifice, of silence, of giving more than I had. Now, for once, the proof was mine, not theirs. And I would not give it back without a fight. A door slammed somewhere in the corridor, breaking the fragile stillness. Anna grabbed my arm, eyes wide with panic, pulling me deeper into the pew. The sound of footsteps echoed, slow and deliberate, approaching the chapel door. My breath hitched, the USB digging sharply into my skin. The handle turned, metal grinding loud in the silence. I froze, praying the shadows would shield us, praying the door wouldn't open. But the knob released with a click, the footsteps moving away again. Anna exhaled shakily, pressing her forehead to my arm for a moment. Her body trembled, but she forced a weak smile, whispering, "Not yet." I stroked her hair gently, hiding my own fear under silence. The candles flickered harder, one flame nearly dying before it caught again. It mirrored the small spark inside me, fragile but refusing to vanish. For the first time in days, I felt something other than helplessness. It wasn't hope yet, but a sharp edge of defiance cutting through despair. Still, defiance alone couldn't win against forged papers and signed lies. I closed my eyes, remembering my sacrifices with bitter clarity. Nights when my stomach growled while Daniel ate first. Nights when I stitched until dawn. I thought those wounds had bought me love, bought me loyalty. Instead, they had only taught him how to take without giving. And now, even my liver had become another object in his hunger. Anna shifted beside me, her hand folded tightly, whispering again, "Tomorrow at 10, you'll have to play it. Promise me." Her eyes were fierce, though tears still rimmed them. I nodded slowly, though doubt throbbed in every vein. If the drive failed, I'd lose not just the fight, but her faith too. The chapel felt colder now, the incense fading, leaving damp stone air. I rose slowly, the USB pressed close, heavy as chains. Anna helped me back through the corridor, her steps careful and light. Every shadow seemed to follow us, every flicker of light another spy. The clock struck noon, each chime pushing me closer to the edge of time. Back in the room, I slid under the sheet, clutching the device. The note from yesterday still rested inside the drawer, folded and hidden. Now the drive joined it, two fragile shields against the storm. I whispered to myself, "Hold until tomorrow, just until tomorrow." But in my heart, I knew Daniel would not let me rest that long. The door rattled suddenly, once, then twice, before silence returned. I froze, my hand gripping the drive so tight my knuckles burned. Anna stared at the door, her face pale, lips parting in fear. I prayed it was only the wind, only a nurse passing by. But the silence that followed carried the weight of watching eyes. And then, without warning, the lamp flickered and went dark. Shadows swallowed the room, leaving us in thick silence. Anna gasped, clutching my hand, the USB cold between us. We sat frozen, waiting, listening to every sound beyond the door. And then the faint echo of Daniel's laugh drifted down the hall. Morning arrived heavy, the kind of morning that presses down like a judgment. The blinds barely let in the light, streaks of pale gray cutting across the floor. I had not slept. I had only counted the hours until the confrontation I could not escape. Anna sat beside me, her face drawn, her small hands restless, twisting at her sleeves. She looked at me as if to say, "We are out of time now," and I felt the truth of it in my bones. When the orderly came for us, the hallway seemed longer than the night before, every echo of footsteps striking deeper into my chest. The smell of disinfectant clung to the walls, and the hum of the fluorescent lights was louder than my heartbeat. Daniel walked ahead of us, shoulders squared, his stride confident as though he were leading me to my own sentencing. His wife trailed close behind, perfume hanging in the air like poisoned sweetness, her eyes cold and triumphant. Each step forward was not just a walk toward the boardroom, it was a march into a war I had no choice but to fight. The room itself was sterile, lined with a long table and chairs filled with officials, their eyes tired but sharp. At the center, the doctor adjusted his glasses, papers spread neatly before him. The administrator stood ready with her clipboard, her lips pressed thin as if already sealing my fate. Daniel placed himself near the head of the table, his hand resting possessively on the chair, as if he owned not only the seat, but the very air in the room. My knees trembled as I lowered myself into the chair they had set for me, the wood hard, the air stifling, and the clock above us ticking loud enough to drown reason. The doctor's voice broke the silence. "Mrs. Alvarez," he said, using the formality that stripped me of motherhood and turned me into a case file. "We require your consent form for the procedure. Please present it." His words landed with the force of a hammer, deliberate, official, final. I felt Daniel's eyes drilling into me, a silent command, the smirk tugging at the edge of his lips. I kept my gaze on the table, where the pen lay ready, as though fate itself had been laid out in ink and plastic. My hand shook as I reached under the blanket I carried draped across my lap. Not for the form, not for the forged signature they demanded, but for the small device Anna had slipped into my hand the day before. The USB was cold against my palm, its edges digging into my skin as though reminding me of its weight. Anna's whisper echoed in my ear. "Tomorrow at 10, you'll have to play it. Promise me." I raised my head slowly, meeting the doctor's eyes. "I have something else," I said, my voice low but firm enough to draw every gaze to me. I slid the USB across the table, the small object skittering against the polished wood until it stopped in front of the administrator. Her brow furrowed, suspicion flashing as she picked it up, turning it over between her fingers. "What is this?" she asked sharply. My throat was dry, but I forced the words out. "Proof," I whispered, "that this surgery is not about saving my son." Gasps rippled around the table, but Daniel only laughed, shaking his head as though I had lost my mind. His wife leaned in, whispering something into his ear, but his smirk never faltered. The doctor frowned, motioning to the technician at the side of the room. The drive was plugged into the projector, the machine humming, lights flickering as the screen came alive. For a moment, the room was filled only with static, and my heart threatened to stop. Then a voice poured out of the speakers, sharp, mocking, unmistakable. It was her voice, Daniel's wife, saying, "Forge it. She'll never know." The words sliced through the room like knives, hanging heavy in the silence that followed. My hands clutched the edge of the chair, the shame and vindication warring inside me all at once. The board members shifted, their eyes darting between the screen and the forged forms before them. The administrator's face paled, her hand tightening on the clipboard. Daniel's smirk flickered, but only for an instant, replaced quickly by the mask of arrogance he wore so well. He leaned forward, his voice steady but sharp. "Anyone could fake a recording," he said coldly. "You think this changes anything?" His eyes found mine, burning with fury beneath the calm tone, and I knew that behind his words was a promise of retribution. But before the room could settle into silence again, the recording continued. Another voice came through, softer, weaker, trembling with tears. It was Anna's voice, pleading, "Please stop. Please don't do this to her." My granddaughter's sobs filled the speakers, raw, unguarded, tearing through the facade of control Daniel had tried to build. Gasps spread again, louder this time. the weight of truth pressing down on everyone in the room. I looked at Anna, whose eyes filled with tears, her small frame shaking beside me, but her gaze held steady. The officials murmured among themselves, the sound like a wave breaking against stone. The doctor raised his hand for silence, his face unreadable, his gaze fixed on the screen. "Let it play through," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Daniel shifted uncomfortably, his foot tapping against the floor, his smirk now gone. His wife's face was pale, her hand clutching at her necklace as though it might save her from the words still coming. The air was thick, the only sound, the hum of the projector, and the trembling voice of my granddaughter. The recording cut off suddenly, the sound dying in an abrupt silence that left the room holding its breath. The screen flickered, the file incomplete, the last words hanging in the air like unfinished business. I clenched my fists, fear flooding back as doubt rippled across the officials' faces. Was this enough? Would they dismiss it as a trick, as Daniel had already tried to claim? My chest burned, my breath shallow, as the weight of everything threatened to crush me in that single moment. The doctor cleared his throat, breaking the silence. "We will need to hear the remainder of this recording," he said firmly. His eyes shifted to me, then to Anna, as if demanding answers neither of us could give. Daniel leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly, his lips curling once more into that cruel, mocking smile. "It's over," he whispered across the table, his words meant only for me. "You've embarrassed yourself. Tomorrow goes as planned." His confidence dripped like poison, and my hand shook with both rage and helplessness. I looked down at the table, the USB still plugged in, the small light blinking as though mocking me with its incompleteness. The proof was real, undeniable, but unfinished. Enough to expose their lies, but not yet enough to destroy them. I thought of the missing page from the letter, the forged signatures, the folder still locked in the cabinet. Each piece was scattered, but together they formed the chain that could finally bind Daniel to his truth. My silence would no longer serve me. I had to find the rest. Anna slipped her hand into mine under the table, her palms sweaty, her fingers cold. Her grip was tight, as though holding me to the earth while the storm tried to sweep me away. "Don't give up," she mouthed, her eyes fierce despite the tears that rimmed them. My chest ached, but I nodded faintly, knowing she was the only reason I still had the courage to breathe. The officials began to shuffle papers, whispering among themselves, the weight of decision heavy in the air. The administrator rose abruptly, slamming her clipboard against the table to silence the murmurs. "Enough!" she snapped. "We reconvene tomorrow at 10 sharp with a full recording. Until then, nothing is decided." Her voice carried the authority of someone trying to salvage control from the ruins of exposed lies. She gathered her papers quickly, avoiding my eyes, her lips pressed tight. Daniel stood behind her, his fists clenched, his face red with barely restrained rage. The room emptied slowly, the officials filing out, their expressions unreadable but shaken. The hum of the projector faded as the screen went black, leaving only the echo of Anna's sobs still hanging in my ears. I sat frozen, the wooden chair digging into my back, the USB still blinking faintly in the dark. Daniel lingered a moment longer, stepping close enough that only I could hear him. His whisper was low, venomous. "You think you've won? Tomorrow it ends." When he finally left, the silence swallowed me whole. Anna pressed her forehead against my arm, whispering, "We still have tonight." Her words trembled, but they lit the spark I needed to rise again. The pieces of proof were out there, the missing page, the full recording, the forged signature waiting to be seen. Tonight would decide whether tomorrow became my execution or my deliverance. The hallway outside was quiet as we left the boardroom, but I felt eyes on me from every shadow. Every echo of footsteps seemed heavier, every flicker of light sharper, watching, waiting. I clutched the USB close as if it were my last shield. My heart pounded with the certainty that Daniel would not sleep tonight. Not while I still had this small, blinking proof of his betrayal. And neither I knew would I. Because tomorrow at 10, my silence would no longer protect him. It would either save me or destroy me forever. The USB blinked on the table, its light like a tiny accusation. Daniel stood near the door, his smirk colder than stone. Friday 10 a.m. hung over us like a final judgment. If you want more of these stories, subscribe so I can continue. The room smelled of burnt coffee and cheap cologne. My hands trembled as the administrator prepared to press play. Anna squeezed my fingers, her nails biting into my skin. The projector whirred loudly, metal cooling vents hissing like snakes. Hope flickered briefly when the first sentence cleared our names. A tangible threat remained. Their lies could still be denied. My voice shook as I asked for the rest of recording. The technician frowned, checking files, his fingers moving carefully. They said the file was corrupted, needing time to recover. The official postponed the hearing, scheduling reconvening for morning. Postponed decision tightened my throat like a cold chain. A nurse slipped me a photocopy, one small victory gained. It showed part of that missing letter, faded but legible. My name appeared, but the crucial last paragraph was blank. That tiny proof eased terror slightly, igniting fierce determination. Yet the larger file still hid the final damaging words. We left the hospital under a sky washed in gray. Anna walked with me, her small steps quick and steady. We planned to see the technician privately, seeking the whole recording. The personal cost loomed. Exposure could cost Anna safety too. Still, the promise of truth pushed me forward, despite fear. At the technician's office, the door smelled of oil and paper. He hesitated, glancing at Anna before he unlocked the drive. His fingers trembled as he navigated corrupted folders and timestamps. A tiny chirp confirmed there was more, hidden fragments in torrents. The breakthrough felt close, hope flaring like a small bonfire. We played the file slowly, each second a careful incision. At first, static swallowed words, then a muffled laugh emerged. It was Daniel, lighter than usual, saying something cold and casual. His tone made my skin crawl, every syllable a blade. Then Anna's whisper returned, pleading, raw, undecorated with fear. Midway, the recording captured a new voice, surprised and frightened. It said a name I recognized, but I could not place. Who else was involved? The question cut deeper than any blade. My cost was clear. If I pushed, I might lose everything. Yet not acting felt like signing my own death sentence. Anger rose unexpectedly, hot and fierce, burning my throat. I imagined confronting him, tearing his smirk into pieces. But the technician warned softly about legal consequences awaiting us. The decision remained postponed, each option laden with heavy price. Anger flickered into strategy. I would not move blind. We left with copies, hearts racing, footsteps quick and careful. Back in my room, I studied each fragment like scripture. Each word felt like a stitch unraveling the fabric of lies. Helplessness seeped when I thought how easily they could erase evidence. But Anna's steady breathing reminded me I wasn't alone in battle. Illusion tempted me. Perhaps resolution would come without bloodshed. I pictured apologies, cash returned, quiet apologies, replacing fury. But reality kept slapping that sweet thought aside ruthlessly. The files showed planning, signatures, and roles clearly assigned. I understood then the fight had to be public and fierce. We wrote down names, times, and every tiny damaging detail. Each note cost me sleep and peace, but bought me proof. Anna suggested confronting the administrator with witnesses present. I hesitated, knowing witnesses could be bribed or quieted. The postponed decision weighed like a stone in my gut. Night came again, thick and unforgiving, the hospital lights dull. Daniel visited briefly, leaning on the doorway like a judge. He whispered two words that burned into me. You lose? His tone promised retaliation if I pursued their crimes. Fear flooded anew, but anger tempered it into resolve. I sat awake, feeling the personal cost heavy and immediate. Medications might be cut. My small pension threatened my freedom. Those were not abstract fears. They were practical, cruel risks. Anna slept fitfully, clutching the blanket as if it mattered. I promised myself I would not let them erase us. Morning came with a thin rain tapping the windows like fingers. We arrived at the hospital early, determined and quiet as ghosts. The administrator entered the boardroom with the same clipboard armor. This time, witnesses filled the chairs, their faces tight and steady. My heart hammered. Both hope and fear tangled like barbed wire. We played the full recording this time, no interruptions allowed. Voices filled the room, casual then vicious, laying out plans. They spoke of forging forms, of deadlines, of profit from suffering. Each confession was a blow, exposing names and actions clearly. The witnesses shifted, shock and anger replacing their earlier detachment. Daniel's face drained of color as the audio named him directly. He rose, fury blazing, stumbling through newfound fear. His wife tried to stammer a denial, voice thin and shaky. But even she could not cover the sound recorded so plainly. The board members exchanged glances. The tide unmistakably shifted. A tangible threat remained. Legal action could destroy them or me. The doctor pushed back, wounded pride morphing into a desire to save face. The cost to me remained high: health, reputation, and peace. But justice felt possible, fragile and dangerous as glass. I watched Daniel slump into his chair, defeated and small. Someone in the room called the police to report fraud and coercion. The officers arrived, their boots thumping authority across the tile floor. Daniel's hands trembled as he realized the consequences closing around him. My personal cost was still tall. Humiliation clung like wet cloth. But seeing him in handcuffs felt oddly like weight lifting from me. The administrator tried to negotiate, pleading for leniency with officials. But words could not erase recorded evidence or signatures stark and clear. My postponed decision finally resolved itself in that terrible, bright moment. They removed the forged consent from files, admitting it was fraudulent. The tangible threat of surgery evaporated like smoke in sunlight. Relief washed over me, surprising and raw, tears coming without shame. My health remained uncertain, but my dignity returned piece by piece. Anna hugged me fiercely, her small arms strong and sure. Neighbors gathered, murmuring sympathy, offering food and quiet support. The breakthrough felt like sunrise after a long, pitched battle. Daniel received consequences, but the law moved slowly, patient and cold. I feared reprisals, small acts of cruelty that might follow him. Yet each apology from neighbors felt like tiny stitches, healing wounds. My personal cost included sleepless nights and frayed nerves still raw. But truth had traveled further than their lies ever would. Weeks later, the court confirmed charges and restitution was ordered. They returned small funds, apologized publicly, though empty words remained. I used the money to secure Anna's schooling and doctor appointments. Her future felt protected, at least for the fragile present. The community's respect returned slowly, like a cautious green shoot. I still woke some nights to shadowed memories of threats and ink, but the sense of being seen settled like a soft coat. I found strength in small rituals, tea at dawn, knitting evenings. Anna's laugh became medicine, her stories brightening the dull days. The object that once threatened me now served as proof of survival. For the first time in years, I felt my dignity return slowly. The hospital's walls no longer felt like cages, but witnesses instead. I tell this story so others know truth can unmask greed. Você gostou da história? Deixe seu comentário aqui embaixo. Diga sua opinião. What would you have done in my place? Tell me below.